Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy site. Today is Tuesday, June 28th of 2022, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me, as always, and double-checking the date it looks like, is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
There was an element of that, yeah, but it was also just like a general, just kind of like looking off into nothingness, and like knowing that there's about to be thrown at me, and an element of like realizing you and I haven't discussed what we're doing or if we're doing anything next week, because I will be in California next week's show. Right. So I imagine possible like there just won't be a show next week.
I can do a solo pod and get it sent over before you leave.
Okay,
I can make that happen.
You would have to do that like before I leave Saturday, because I won't really have access to anything to upload for next week. So that's
doable. Yeah.
All right.
So there's some housekeeping. You get a solo Logan pod again, like you did a while ago when I did something on James Bond. But this week we are not doing a solo pod or talking about James Bond. We are instead talking about Star Wars. Unfortunately, you missed the 30 minutes beforehand. We just talked about the Obi-Wan series. But it's very good, and it put me even more in the mood to talk about Star Wars, kind of building off some of our conversation last week that we kind of alluded to. Yes, this week we are talking about our kind of dream Star Wars game pitches and kind of what we're looking at. I've got two different big ones. Trevor, it sounds like, has got one he's looking at. So Trevor, I guess we should do maybe one of mine, yours, and one of mine.
Yeah.
Maybe makes the most sense.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I'll start off then with one of mine. The first one for me that I want to go to, it's tough. Which one do I want to do more? I'll do the second one. So the first one I want to talk about is an Old Republic, either RPG or action adventure game, right? And I think the Old Republic is like low key one of the more interesting eras of Star Wars, and also like the least explored, really, or lesser explored. And I've always been really fascinated by it. As someone who really loves to watch like really slick cinematics they do for like the Old Republic like MMO that they have out there, and is like constantly captivated. And then like, damn, I want to play that game. And then I like look into the Old Republic and I'm like, oh wait, I would really not like to play this game. Actually, it's nothing that I want to do. I would love if they just took that entire thing and just made me a like 20 to 30 hour experience. Give me that just whole game in like Fallen Order style. Give me like an RPG, like make it like a 50-hour, like something like that. Like I would love this kind of thing set, 1,000 generations before the original trilogy, right? And kind of get in this period either kind of in the early parts of the Old Republic or maybe in the later stages or in the Civil War or something. But like, it is a genre that lasts for tens of thousands of years. And there's so much material to pull from and so much stuff to do there. You can incorporate like the Darth Bane aspects of that, or like the Civil War aspect of it, like they do most in the MMO. And I just think it's so rich to explore. Even do something I think would be cool would be like almost like a like Star Wars Enterprise kind of vibe to it, right? Like take it on like them leaving like the first kind of core world cluster and branch not beyond that, right? And like you're like frontiers in like a Mass Effect-y almost kind of way. Like I think that could be so much fun and so engaging, and there's so much potential for them to really explore the Old Republic. And I've always thought it'd be like a really cool idea for them to do like a TV series there, or even like books or games or anything. And so I've always thought that I would love to see a game set in that kind of time period, because it frees you and allows you to break away with like any known characters whose fates we know, or who like is related to someone whose fates we know. So we kind of know their fate too. And it's like, no, like this is set 10,000 years beforehand. Anyone can live, anyone can die. Nothing is safe. Let's just tell our own story. And that seems super refreshing to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's like pretty much your dream game was Knights of the Old Republic then, and you just never got to play it because it was on Xbox. I mean, that's, and we'll, segue into, because my game is like, pulling a lot from
Spoiler alert.
Republic, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's like Knights of the Old Republic was set in the Old Republic. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's like 4,000 years, I think, before
I think
the
so.
Galactic Empire of the modern age, and it's still like it allows you to explore all of those things. There is Sith and Jedi, and there are protocol droids, and there are scoundrels, and there are Twi'leks and Wookiees and Mandalorians, and like there are all of those things and all of those cultures, but yeah, they're not like tied to Skywalker or Palpatine or like Kenobi or any of those names.
Yeah.
Like there's even a character of Yoda's species. I don't remember who the character's name is, but I'm pretty sure he was voiced by Ed Asner in the games.
I love that.
And as like a head of the Jedi Council on Dantooine and stuff like that. And so like and even there, a lot of the locations are the same locations you might be familiar with, but they're generations and eras apart.
Eons. Yeah, right.
But you still have like the Hutts maybe control parts of like the the smuggling trade, and that's just a thing as old as time itself or whatever. And so like that game in particular was so much the prototype for what eventually they BioWare would do with Mass Effect, but with all within the confines of the Star Wars kind of license. And so they got to tell like really fun stories. They gave you your own ship, the Ebon Hawk, that is very much inspired by the Millennium Falcon, but is of its own regard. You have your own like R2D2 C3PO like comparison droids, like the astromech droids, kind of an older not like a much more like primitive looking, not sleek and whatnot, like R2D2's shape and design. And the protocol droid is basically like the former protocol droid for the dark head of the Sith, and is programmed to constantly want to kill people and is basically like a bounty hunter / protocol droid, and constantly referring to people as meat bags and stuff. And so like it's a ton of fun behind like that, and how they can kind of like, it's a complete subversion of your C3PO type. I mean, they even play with in the year like long before Ahsoka would become a gray Jedi, they have a gray Jedi character in Knights of the Republic that they that like is in your party. And so yeah, it was like that. It's such a shame you never played that game, and I hope that like the remake translates well enough that like you are able to really get a lot of the same vibes out of it that like those of us that played Knights of the Republic so many years ago did. Because it is a fun one for all of the reasons you kind of like described, of like it not being beholden to, but still being able to be in the spirit of all those other things.
Right.
In that vein, like I mentioned before we started recording, that like a lot of mine is just kind of like pulling from that, but
make that game again.
it's a little bit that, but like in the kind of in the inverse, I guess, of you a little bit, I rather than just remake KOTOR bigger and better, because they're already doing that, I kind of started thinking of like how cool it would be to go the other end of the timeline, and let's look and see what the galaxy looks like 4,000 years from the end of Rise of Skywalker. Inevitably Sith and Jedi will probably like have built their arms and kind of be back in, because history repeats itself. Cycles are always coming and going. The Sith are never fully gone. They always come back. They always find a way to come back. Or there will always be like Force sensitive people that will be like, hey, what would be better than being like a good guy? Being a bad guy. So I think you can still have like all of those fun dynamics, and maybe there are elements and allusions to like the Skywalkers or something in the history books, in the same way that there are allusions to Darth Bane or whatever, as you kind of mentioned. But I think it would be like I would want pretty much all, like, so many of the Knights of the Republic things, but with a modern, like, with all of the things that video games has learned in the last 20 years. So like and especially like I would want it to be and play more like a Mass Effect or like a Dragon Age, probably like like gameplay wise I would probably want it to be more like Dragon Age than Mass Effect, because Mass Effect is so much shooter centric. And I think if you keep it that confined to that, which you certainly could, but then you're going to be like much more blaster centric. And I think if you still have kind of like the Dragon Age active combat, but also still turn based, so you can kind of like think tactically. I think that could be a lot of fun, and that's largely what the original KOTOR was, and worked nicely for both lightsaber combat and blaster combat, depending on what kind of build your character was. But I think with like Knights of the Republic is early days in terms of like voice acting and stuff, so there's a lot of there's a lot of room for improvement there. Obviously, like they leveled up their design work when they did Mass Effect and stuff. So I think there's a lot of lessons that could be built there from, wildly twisting and turning, like side quests and main quests, and how everything like plays together, and all the different choices you make and how that can impact the galaxy at large. I think there could be a lot of fun there. I think you could still incorporate elements like Jedi Fallen Order and like when your character inevitably, like, the thing I don't want is you start out as a youngling and you like level up. I want it to be like you are either like you are discovered, and you're being introduced to the Force at an old age, and the teachings of like you have to be taught young are just, they're gone by the wayside. They're like, people understand that, hey, you don't have to do that, and hey, maybe like connections aren't a bad thing, and so you can have like romance options and stuff as well, and it's not, and you're not just a crazy monk. So yeah, I think there's like a lot of fun potential there. But you could also, when you inevitably are designing your lightsaber, you can really get into the like, if I use this thing, I'm gonna like, it's gonna improve my stats, or it's gonna just look cool or whatever, and you can kind of play with that level of granularity and detail, much like you could in elements of the original KOTOR, where you can basically like, you have your kyber crystal that you can affect, you have your, I think, lens, and your hilts, I think, are all like, they'll give you like plus bonuses or minus bonuses, or add X, Y, and Z kind of like features. I think there's fun to be had there. And also like, throw in an infamous type system, or some kind of like, a you can play this story how you want to play, a Paragon Renegade system. Like, if you want to be a bad guy, you can be a Sith, can keep that element as well. And take over the galaxy by power or something, or you save the galaxy and be a Jedi, or find a way that makes playing the middle ground fun and engaging, as opposed to like, well, I have to, to get the full experience, I have to
do all good or all bad.
Yeah,
right.
one way or the other. Like, make it so that you're like, make it more like Fallout New Vegas was, where it's like, hey, this, like, your allegiance to people is based on like what you do for them, and not how good you are karma wise versus how bad you are karma wise. Like, that can control whether you're Jedi or Sith, and maybe like whether you have access to light side powers or dark side powers, but you can help people out by being a ruthless Sith still. If like those are your allies, you can like, I think that is still something that could be fun to explore. And you could be a Jedi that sometimes crosses the line and gets into questionable territory, and maybe makes bets with pod racers or something like that. And also then throw in fun little side things like pod racing or something.
Oh yeah, always.
Yeah, I think like a big, so it'd be like the spirit of the original Knights of the Old Republic, but set generations in the future to see what becomes of the galaxy, not as long ago, but still far away. And yeah, like I think there's a lot of potential to be explored, as you said, in a genre, in a setting that is millennia long. We don't need to always, play within the same sandbox of the same 80 years.
Right. It's interesting, actually. Or maybe it's not based off what I like about Star Wars. I actually have almost no desire to go in the future that much. And so that's an interesting pitch that like I don't usually think about. I'm just like, what if we just take it hella in the future? What if we Back to the Future to this? And
I mean, that's like the thing is, I don't think it's going to be drastically different. Like, you go to the Old Republic, it's not like like they were still like spacefaring people millennia ago,
right?
And like not a ton of things have changed. So I think like really, it's like so much of the archetypes and stuff and the tropes will still be there thousands of years from now, because that seems to be kind of the like, generation of progress. But it allows you to give like brand new designs to everything and new looks and new feels to a lot of stuff. But you still have, your like all of your general species, or you could have found new species, and so maybe there are a handful of new species out
different
there.
Things.
Or some species that didn't get their fair share in current eras of stuff, or even past eras of stuff. Maybe there've been rise and fall. Maybe the Toydarians are now like one of the head races of the galaxy.
Maybe.
And you can give Greg Miller that small Watto game he's always begging for.
That's totally possible. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to explore that to some degree, right? Like, as someone who, I like the end of Return of the Jedi. Obviously, I've mentioned this on many podcasts. And so I think I'd be curious to see what they do and how far into the future they set it, if they did like something in the future. And I think Star Wars has always sort of shied away from doing a ton. So they've pretty much done nothing post Rise of Skywalker yet, really. And even like post Return of the Jedi, in terms of like official things, it's basically just like the sequel movies for the most part.
And there's Star Wars Resistance, one of the other animated shows. It's basically the
Poe Dameron, right?
I think it's basically like the lead up into, it's effectively the Rebels, but for the modern trilogy.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They're the sequel trilogy.
And so like I think they sort of view that as like the end in a little bit, which is why I think it's more likely they go back. But like, I'd definitely be curious like how they incorporate that, right? And how they incorporate the saga's history. If they did like a true like millennia or even like a couple centuries into the future sequel series, right? Like Star Wars: The Next Generation kind of style thing. How they would go about incorporating the history of the saga and the Skywalkers and everyone like that. And maybe they can finally figure out a way to like do Star Wars history well, and like make its kind of central cast of characters and heroes and figures like work really well. And so like that'd be something to think about. I actually, you used a good tangent for your segue. You gave me a good segue into my second game I want to give, like, idea I want to give a shout out to, which is like, I actually would love if they let us be kids. If they like, that's sort of my pitch, is that like, give me a like, arc of a Jedi story here. Make me be young and then turn off the game, and then like slowly transition into like, a Padawan, and then become like a Jedi Knight, and then become like a Jedi Master kind of thing, and like, sit on the Jedi Council by the end of the game. Like, give me like an arc of like an entire Jedi story set during like the High Republic era of the Jedi, right? Like the peak of the Jedi Order, right? Like they're kind of doing for like the Star Wars novels right now. Like, give me something set like 400, 500, 600 years ago, maybe like 1,000, so you can just even avoid like Yoda kind of thing. But like, we're in like the high days of like the Republic and the Jedi Order. Like, give me just like a Star Wars story, right? Like a Jedi story from like birth through like his entire or her entire or their entire like Jedi career, or like maybe give us the option to be like a bad guy, but I don't even need necessarily that much. Like I think of that flavor. Like just give me Logan gets to be a Jedi, like that life story kind of thing, and like I think I would really love like this like giant sprawling like choose your own adventure RPG kind of based Star Wars kind of game.
I will say I did have an alternate potential pitch that I thought about. Then I was like, no, that wouldn't be my dream project, and I don't even know how they would make that. But it was basically Yoda, and it's like you play a 900-year-old, like you play the 900-year-old arc of Yoda's story, going all the way back
Right.
to the High Republic and you know
Mm-hmm.
his early days, you know, as whatever, like whatever the Yoda version of a youngling would be,
Mm-hmm.
into, you know, him as a Padawan. And was he, you know, was he reckless then? Did he have, you know, those kinds of vibes? Or what, you know, what was he like? Who trained Yoda? All that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, get into the era of him training Darth Tyrannus, you know, eventually, you know, in the lead up to the prequels and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, it very much like that was like, I don't know how you how you tell a
Condensed
good
900
story.
years.
And yeah, and like how do you pick and choose like what parts of his life you're, because obviously it's not going to be a, you know, a, like they're even that they're not going to condense down into like a multi-year kind of like arc or whatever. So like what elements, what beats, what glimpses into Yoda's life do you get for something like that. But like like that idea started with like the impetus of, yeah, it would be fun to see something like in the High Republic era or in the, you know, prequel kind of era. And hey, yeah, it'd be fun to explore Yoda's life. And then yeah, it was just like
I
I
I
would
actually
not, I would
really
not wish that on a game developer.
I think it's a really cool idea. I think yeah, it's a I mean, like you said, almost like an impossible task for a game. It's interesting too because as someone who like really, really, really loves the character of Yoda, Yoda's my second favorite character in Star Wars after Luke. Like I love the character of Yoda. I think it's really cool to get the idea of like this like being who is just seems to be like just infused with the Force, right? It's like the Force like almost personified more than like any other character in like the Star Wars saga. Like he kind of represents, I think, the Jedi and the Force and everything that isn't kind of twined in that. And then both because of like his like personal stances and kind of vibes and like the culture that he embodies, but also because he's just like more powerful than any single thing we've ever seen in the Star Wars saga, right? Like that's this whole thing is that he's the most powerful Jedi of all time. And so like it's a cool idea, I think, to kind of get that whole arc, right? Especially because like you can kind of view Yoda's life with almost like this like Shakespearean tragedy to it, right? Because he is born during like the high days, like the golden age of the Republic and the golden age of the Jedi Order, and lives through that for for literally centuries. But also then because he lives so long, he's cursed to also see like the slow kind of decline and the kind of rot begin to build in, and then obviously like the fall and everything happen in there. And then kind of is alive just long enough to like see the like the flickers and flames of like hope and like the rebellion kind of swing into action. And so like there's something really, I think, grand and Shakespearean and epic in kind of like the classical sense of that word about that. But that's yeah, that's an impossible game to do. And it also kind of brushes up against the like Han Solo and like Joker problem a little bit, where it's like, do we want to know everything about Yoda, right? Like so much of the magic of Yoda is that we don't know about him, right? Like George Lucas has like famously never said what his homeworld is or what his species is, and that's like one of the few things that they've like carried forward post Lucas is like not naming that species and not naming where they're planet from, and like they are just like these weird beings who are incredibly force sensitive, right, and incredibly force powerful. That seems to be like the only kind of thread that connects Yoda and Yodel and Baby Yoda kind of all together. And so like I think that is a thing that I also like, right? Like that's one of the things that's so fascinating about Yoda is that like, yeah, he's just this 900-year-old green little dude who talks funny, but is actually more powerful than every other single Jedi. Like part of what makes Yoda cool is the fact that like he doesn't even need to use a lightsaber to beat you, right? Like just like him using the Force is more powerful than anything you can do with the blade. And then when he uses the lightsaber, oh yeah, he's also one of the greatest lightsaber men of all time as well, right? And so like I think that's a element of that I kind of want that to be a secret. I kind of want to make my own headcanon for that. And I have before in the past. I would I kind of like mapped it like what Yoda's life story would look like. And like I kind of liked it of like it just being personal to each person. But I love the idea of like using that idea and making it way more manageable for a game studio by being like, hey, instead of a millennium of a person's life, let's give us 70 years. Give us like a 60-year life story of a Jedi from like youngling through like them making the council kind of thing, right? And like what does that journey look like and how does it kind of coincide with this version of Star Wars history and the characters and the places that we kind of know. And like I'd love to see Coruscant and Dantooine and Naboo and Mon Calamari and all these different kind of elements of the Star Wars universe that maybe are really well shown or like lesser shown but talked about kind of thing. And I think I just like when games let me just live a like life of a character all the way through. And I think it'd be super fun to do Star Wars, and it's very hard because Star Wars is so massive and it's so complex, and there'd be like a like absurdity of like moving parts to it. But like I think it'd be really cool to get to do that kind of thing. And that's like a wildly ambitious thing that like maybe is like 10 years down the line in terms of like feasibility. So give me the Old Republic game first, but like I would love that eventually to just get a giant sprawling like 6-decade epic of Star Wars.
Yeah, as we were talking about that, I looked up because I want to verify, and I realized I misspoke earlier. Ed Asner is not the Yoda-like character in Knights of the Old Republic. He's like another character on the Jedi Council with a Yoda-like character. The Yoda character is named Vandar Tokare,
obviously
a member of the Yoda species, voiced by Tom Kane, veteran voice actor, who's done a ton of other Star Wars and Clone Wars stuff and stuff like that. So yeah, he actually was the voice of, but like it is a like you said, that species definitely some kind of like innate power to while it would be fun and interesting to see like more of them and what was Yoda's relationship with Yaddle or something like that, it would very much be a tough plate to spin in a way that like is gonna just make a lot of people mad because he is probably a untouchable character or something,
right, at this point for sure.
So yeah, don't try and dive into that. But
although think about that, like maybe a way around that though, Trevor, is like making it another member of his species, right? Like making it set, maybe doing it set like like 1500 years ago kind of thing, to like make it where like they're not interacting, or maybe like 1100 where there's some interaction between like these two characters. Like like this is a pre-Yoda, our kind of era Star Wars thing, and like you still get
go find someone in that species who was a Sith and just see them,
ooh,
or who just over the course of their lifetime wavered between being Sith and being Jedi or something like that,
or had doubts, had these conflictions. And like I think there is something really engaging about that character and that species, and like you said, like this innate thing. And when you even say like they have like this kind of connection to the Force, like my mind kind of flashed to like Jack and Dexter, right? And the fact that like the precursors ultimately all look like Dexter, and like that being such a funny idea of like, what if like like the original Force users are all just Yoda's people, right? And like that's sort of like that being like a funny idea of like, everyone thinks it's like these like giant hunky looking guys named Harrison Ford and like Mark Hamill who look just like great, and in reality it's just like these like 2 foot tall green dudes who speak funny. And like I love that idea too of like, yeah, these are just, they just seem, I mean, otherworldly seems kind of like a small thing to say in the Star Wars universe, but like, yeah, like they just seem other than any other species because of the way that Yoda carries himself, and even like kind of the reverence that like they have for like Baby Yoda now and Grogu, and like even like the various kind of Yoda-like creatures that we see, how few and far between they are. Like they're all shrouded in this kind of mystique and mystery and reverence, and like I like this idea that they're almost like primordial beings in some sense that kind of predate almost everything, like these little green dinosaurs. And so maybe that's a way to get around it by still kind of telling that similar story, but having it not be Yoda, so you have a bit more license to kind of deviate off the path. You want to kind of make it a bit more like clouded, or just have more freedom with what that character's life and journey looks like, and how their story comes to a close, and the people they interact with, and those kind of relationships. And so I think that's a really cool idea. Maybe like them, like the proto Yoda and Yoda like briefly meeting at the end of their lives, and like that having some sort of impact on Yoda, right, going forward, either for good or bad, either as like an inspiration or a thing to not be. Like I think it's a really cool idea. Again, maybe make that character live significantly less than Yoda, have a condensed lifespan, not 900 years, maybe just like 100 or 200, and kind of bounce around their life. But like, I think that could be a fun way to kind of get around that. Otherwise, Trevor, any other Star Wars game ideas you want to shout out before we go into the wrap up here?
No, not really. Like it's like, I mean, like you do have like cool things that are out there, like.
Yeah,
like just
there are a lot of good. There are a lot of
Beat
Star Wars
Saber
games.
in general is like a really cool thing of getting to use a lightsaber, but for a music rhythm game and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with Star Wars in reality, but it's still like it like VR lightsaber duels could be fun if the tech were there. But even that, like, you're never gonna get like something that gives you like the like proper resistance of like something that's actually going to give you like a pushback or something.
Yeah.
But then I think too, like one of the coolest like Star Wars experiences I ever had was it's long since shut down now, but me, Lauren, Ben, and then some complete rando who was our fourth did a Star Wars VR experience in like downtown Disney a number of years back. And it was basically like we were like, it was VR that like we put on a rig, and it was like situational, like spatial. So like we were walking around from like room to room in this in this area, and we were basically like sneaking into a facility to try and like acquire some artifact or something, and like Vader ends up like interrupting us at the end. But like there was a lot of just cool little elements of it. Like it was there were blaster fight elements where you're shooting out there, and like the things you're shooting are actually the environment was breaking. I remember like the favorite element that I will always think of on that was we were in some kind of like chamber, and we were basically locked in, and the system was basically like, do this pattern to unlock the door, and like we would try it and wouldn't get it, and enemies would come in. Like I think like the room was filling up with gas or something like that, I think, and so like we were on some kind of like timetable, and anytime we failed, like an alarm went off and enemies came in. We basically had to shoot them out. We tried it like 2 times and failed like both times. So finally, I just shot the console that like we were supposed to be doing these things on, just to see what would happen. And like the doors opened, and like that ended up being an optional way to get out of the challenger, out of the room or whatever. And I said like in character in the moment, like boring conversation anyway, and just like was like fully got to live my Han Solo moment
right
in VR. And so like that was just a cool, very cool experience that like, sure, if you could find a way to do that on a grand VR scale, something like that would be awesome and cool.
Amazing.
Um, in the same like, there. I mean, as it is, they're like cool VR experiences of like Tales of Batu, I think, and it's basically like you can,
Hmm.
you can travel the outskirts of the like the Black Spire, which is basically the Star Wars land at Disneyland kind of thing, and you can kind of go out and go hunting and stuff. Like I've played a little bit of that VR game as well, and collecting resources and taking it back, and doing fetch quests and stuff like that. Um, and so like that's for an immersion's sake, that's like a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And that also has like little interstitials where you are kind of like a Jedi like struggling with like turning to the dark side. But yeah, like the problem with that is, again, if you're ever doing a lightsaber thing, like it would have to be a like multiple people in a room together, and you just have in the same way that we had like blasters that we were shooting, like plastic guns that we were shooting in VR, you would need like a lightsaber like with a staff kind of thing that is there so that you actually have contact with another player or something like that to really like turn that into the full effect. But yeah, that's the pie in the sky, like, oh, it'd be really cool,
Yeah.
30 years from now when gaming technology and all that stuff can do those kinds of things. But in the meantime, I will gladly take my give me KOTOR but better.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard thing to fit into it. There's also, I guess, a shout out to be had for just Galaxy's Edge in general and how like immersive and spectacular that world is, and it's very fitting there. This is gonna go live. This is gonna go live like the week before Trevor's in Galaxy's Edge again, probably at Disney. But like, there really is nothing I've ever experienced like that in my entire life. Like it is so immersive, and you just sink into that world so easily. And it's both in really big ways. Oh, there's a Millennium Falcon, and like really small details, like the lettering on water bottles kind of thing that like you can't help but just be in that world and living and breathing. And there's something really special to be said for how effective Galaxy's Edge is, sort of one giant game that you're all kind of collectively playing with each other. And
even more so
that is just really neat.
The elevated version of that like I imagine is gotta close like before too much longer, because I can't imagine it's actually like keeping business going. But like the Star Wars Cruiser Hotel thing that they, like the immersive like 2-day experience that they did, where you're on a starship that gets invaded by the First Order, but you can be like doing lightsaber training, and they have like games where it's not like you're holding a lightsaber and stuff, and you're shooting like the remote training droid kind of thing, and like it's all reacting to where you're placing the blade and stuff like that, so you can deflect bolts and stuff. So like that would be a thing that VR could certainly do now, is like give you that vibe. But like if you try to do like lightsaber on lightsaber stuff, like there's definitely like Disney, I think, will continue to make very immersive like Star Wars experiences for people. It's just a matter of like being able to do it and find a price point that people can actually like experience it in. And $5,000 for a 2-day like hotel stay ain't it. So
not it.
But yeah, like I think just the legacy of Disney, like that's something that they will continue to be invested in, especially like you have somebody like John Drake up there as like the VP of games. Like he gets it. He knows the kinds of games that people want. Like there are Disney sim games that are like coming out these days, and I'm sure they'll continue to do that kind of stuff on the Star Wars side of things as well. But yeah, I think there is endless potential for cool Star Wars games, and I think for a lot of what is exciting about any of the pitches we kind of brought to the table is like stepping outside of this small little bucket of 100 years
Yeah.
of time and exploring either, more of the past or the future of the galaxy, and seeing, those same kinds of dynamics
Yeah.
rise up, but tell them with new characters, with different protagonists, with different heroes. Like, it would be, I think it would be particularly exciting of, like, a a story where your entire crew is non-humanoid or non like basic
Yeah.
human characters, and it
Yeah.
is, a Wookiee and a Twi'lek um
Cyborg.
and yeah, like cyborgs and droids, and just like no real humans, or like no just basic humans, I guess, because a lot of
Mhm.
those are like humanoid, but yeah,
I
lots
I
of endless potential.
I think it's a really great idea, right? And I think, to wrap it up, I can't agree more with the last point, right? Which is, me and you each love Star Wars. We did an entire summer Star Wars about it, and talked about the saga still, kind of in the many years of this show. But I also think that we each agree that the Skywalker story has been told. Whether that was done successfully in 3 episodes, 6, or 9, I think you can kind of take your pick. It wasn't 9, that's for sure. But it's definitely been told, right? And I think we've gotten everything we can get out of those characters, and we've gotten their journeys. And I just think this is a universe, a literal universe, that is so rich and so creatively untapped still in a lot of ways, that there's so much to do here, right? And it's given us some of the most kind of enduring, I think, and important pop culture characters in the last 50 years. And it's also okay to say those characters are incredibly important, they're super impactful, and they're always going to be among our like greatest cultures and greatest kind of characters and stories going forward. But also, we can do new and different things in different time periods.
I mean, look
And
at
just
Star
have fun
Wars
as giant
Visions.
playbacks. Right, yeah. And like, look at Star Wars Visions, look at Knights of the Old Republic, and how people feel about the game. Like, look when they do go branch out, do something different, how people feel about these things. And I just think, I love Luke and Han and Chewie and Yoda and Leia and Obi-Wan, and there's this incredible richness of Star Wars characters we've been blessed with, for 45 years that George Lucas gave us. But I also think that, part of what he gave us is this amazing sandbox. And so, yeah, I hope that we do more and new and different things in Star Wars, both in film and TV and games. I've maybe been the biggest critic at that reset of saying we don't need to do so many things around these characters, and they're just kind of fan servicey bits right now. Let's do different things. Let's do new things in Star Wars. And yeah, so I'm excited to see what they do. Even while I revel in glory, while I hold Luke's lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge, both can be true. We're nothing if not contradictions. That is the show, though. Trevor, you've got a shout out. Shout it out.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to a piece from our good friend Jessica Howard over
Mm-hmm.
at Gamespot. She posted an article yesterday, a couple days ago, as you're listening to this, over on GameSpot, titled "I recreated Twilight in The Sims 4 and everyone died." She basically took advantage of The Sims has a new expansion pack for werewolves, in addition to the already existing one that had vampires, and she basically created a little 3-person 2-bedroom house with Bella, Edward, and Jacob, and like basically gave them some basic stats and kind of started setting things in motion, and then just let the game kind of play itself, and like they're out there just dying left and right, and she kind of tells a fun little story of the experience she had upon doing that, with a lot of fun little pictures and stuff like that. So just want to give Jessica a shout out, because always endlessly proud of seeing her make those moves and just do fun, cool things over there at GameSpot.
Yeah. Agreed. Everyone go check it out. I love fun, kind of more silly pieces that we get in the game sphere. And I saw that headline immediately, was just like, I'm going to like this. Yeah, so everyone go check that out. Otherwise, that's the show. Thank you for watching or listening. If you like what you heard, you can go over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Like and subscribe to the video and channel. Ring the little bell to get notified when a new video goes live almost every single day of the week. We've got something happening on the YouTube side of things. Make sure to leave a comment. Tell us what your kind of dream idea Star Wars pitches would be. Then go over to thatnerdysite.com. Check out all those reviews, features, content going up on the written site, as well as going to the podcast service of your choice, liking and subscribing to the feed. And then while you're there, rate and review us on iTunes. Leave a little 5-star review. Tell us what you like about us. What makes you happy when you listen to this here show. Otherwise, you can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trev, anything that you want to plug or shout out?
We'll give a shout out to two things. One, this week's That Nerdy Site show was me and Cameron. In particular, I talked about the recent films Lightyear and Elvis. Enjoyed them to varying degrees. I liked probably Elvis a little bit more. Just I thought it was interesting and has an incredible central performance by Austin Butler is just really, really good in there. But Lightyear's still a good Pixar movie. It just doesn't reach maybe the highest highs of some other Pixar stuff. And on that, Cameron talked about Neon White, new kind of like speedrunning centric and game, first person platformer shooter actioner kind of game.
Oh, I think I've seen stuff on this.
Yeah. And then he also talked about the first part of Stranger Things season 4. So you can go catch all of our thoughts on all those things. And then I was a guest on our friends over at the Castle Vault podcast this week talking about a Goofy movie. So you can go check that out as well. It's always fun going and catching up with those guys. They've already invited me back. I'm going to be back on with them in a couple months' time to do when they get to an extremely Goofy movie, because I've never actually sat down and watched that one. So yeah, we talked about having me come back on for that, and it'll be some fun times. So yeah, go check out those podcasts.
I encourage everyone to go check out Castle Vault's podcast. I will also go give that a plug and a shout out here. I love when we get to do podcast appearances in other series, whether it's me going over and doing stuff with Jono, whether it's Trevor doing Castle Vault stuff. I think it's a great idea. I love the series. It is, again, a movie that Trevor very much loves. It is one of the very, very, very first D+ shows, if not like episode 1.
Yeah, it's episode 1 of that D+ show. It was as I said, it was the very first thing I watched on Disney+ before even The Mandalorian or, the other, launch day kind of things. It was like I had been wanting to rewatch a Goofy movie for many, many years and just didn't have easy access to it because I didn't have, the DVD, and I didn't have, as I said on the Castle Vault podcast, I was like, and I didn't have a VHS player, and I was like, they call them VCRs, Trevor, VCRs. I didn't have a VCR anymore or access to my old Goofy movie VHS. So yeah, it was just like, it was a long time coming to get to like revisit that movie. And in the many times I've watched it since, I still find like fun new things about it. And in particular on the podcast, we talked about the idea that like, there's so much of a fun, like how much I put my own father-son relationship with my dad into the Max and Goofy dynamic, which is something, I definitely didn't, I was much more, like rebellious kid Max when that movie originally came out, but now I have a much more like bigger, deeper appreciation for like Goofy trying to connect and not even from like, I'm not a father obviously, but like still just appreciating that story so much more, especially for the idea that, in the mid 90s, vulnerable father-son relationships wasn't like a prominent kind of story beat. Even today, it's still not a particularly like big one. So getting to see, those characters, really find each other and come to terms with one another is a lot of fun. And then there's also just fun music in there as well.
Yeah. I would love to talk Goofy movie with you at some point in time. I should everyone should go check out the episode. It's Trevor talks more about a Goofy movie than almost anyone I know, and I love it every single time he does. It is one of the things that brings me the most joy from him. So go check out that podcast. Go check out Castle Vault in general. I have to think of something Disney Plus they haven't done yet that maybe I could do on there as well and have some fun on that.
Well,
and
the thing with the Castle Vault is they go through like chronologically.
Themes.
So yeah, they basically like they're now in season 4 effectively. Like season 1 was going through all of the Disney animated films from start to finish. Then they moved over to Pixar. And they did MCU. We talked that like so now they're doing Disney Toons. So basically like a lot of the like lesser, ones, or a lot of like especially the direct to DVD sequels and stuff. Like we were
Lion
looking
King
ahead.
2.
Exactly. They're going to have Lion King 2 in a couple weeks. I think their next last week was Return to Jafar, and next week is Aladdin and the King of Thieves.
An incredibly good Aladdin movie.
Yeah, they're going to have a ton of like Tinkerbell movies late in this run. And then we were joking with them like what their next series is going to be, and they still have Star Wars in the chamber that they can pull when they really need, and they might really need like to jump over into Star Wars after all of this stuff, or they can they'll eventually probably do Disney Channel original movies as well. So either of those buckets are probably going to be potential options moving forward.
Halloween Town. We should do that'd be we should everyone go check all that out. Finally you can go
in particular Josh wants to Josh over there wants to come on. We talked about like Avatar. He's never seen Avatar. I've never seen Avatar. So when we do
the last Airbender, or like the 2009 movie,
2009 Avatar,
Ooh.
James Cameron. So like when I imagine we will do that in the lead up to the Avatar sequel coming out later this year.
Right.
So we'll probably reach out and invite him on for that episode when we do that.
I've seen Avatar all the way through. I think maybe twice. I think we had it in school once. We had to watch it. I have a lot of thoughts on Avatar. That could be fun to do. Everyone go check out that. Go check out that D Plus. Should now get me all mixed up. That nerdy site at that nerdy site on the internet. Otherwise, for myself, for Trevor, for all of us here at That News.
Also, I guess one last shout out to That Bond Show, which wrapped up last week. Like we should probably like that other podcast we've been doing all year. That one had its finale episode out there.
The finale episode of That Bond Show is live. I am currently, before I was even recording this, I was writing more of the kind of like multiple pieces I have to kind of celebrate the culmination of 6 months of James Bond. In the chamber, I was having a lot of fun writing the Felix watch ranking list. And so go stay tuned for that probably next week. And then otherwise, play your games and be good to each other.